Welcome back to DeFi Tactics. Remember, this is not financial advice. Do not make any financial decisions based on my word alone. Always do your own research. With that said, today we're going to discuss the updated EXFI Snapshot, and we're going to discuss the APY Cloud, what are excess, stressed, and bonded distributions, and how that affects our rewards. Let's get to it. On November 1st, 2021, DeFi Finance published to their Twitter the following tweet. Due to numerous requests from several supporting exchanges and our fellow community members, DeFi Finance has decided to push the snapshot date for the EXFI token airdrop back to December 12th, 2021 at 7 p.m. CET. And they pushed a reply. All balances of the holders of Songbird and Wrapped Songbird will be recorded on this date and will be airdropped to the appropriate amount of EXFI shortly after. Moving to the airdrops.io website, we can see that the step-by-step guide has updated the new snapshot date, but we're still going to run through it. So if you hold Songbird and Wrapped Songbird in a supporting wallet or on a supporting exchange, you will receive EXFI tokens. The exchanges that have announced support for the airdrop are Bitrue, Coinown, and Uphold. The wallets that you can have your Songbird and Wrapped Songbird in order to receive the airdrop is Bifrost, MetaMask, Decent, and Ledger. As we discussed earlier, the snapshot will be taken on December 12th, 2021 at 7 p.m. CET. All eligible holders will receive free EXFI at a ratio of 1 EXFI per 235.275 Songbird. Whether you love it or you hate it, it does allow other people that have their Songbird locked up in an exchange and unable to receive them yet, the ability to participate in the snapshot. Additionally, it allows more people to earn the FTSO or STSO rewards to pump their bags and get more of the airdrop. So what is the APY Cloud, and how does it relate to the governance staking rewards of 5 to 35%? APY Cloud is the first user-governed dynamic yield aggregator allowing for long-term sustainable yield platform-wide. Additionally, APY Cloud creates a predictable minimum and maximum APY for long-term incentivized governance staking. Essentially, this is the mechanism that allows us to earn rewards anywhere from 5 to 35% by participating in the governance staking and voting on governance proposals. On the Songbird network, this will be done with the EXFI token and in the future SFIN. And on the Flare network, it will be done with YFLR and YFIN. So let's run through these excess, stressed, and bonded distributions, and then we'll take a look at the map to kind of visualize how this whole process works. Excess distributions take place quarterly when platform earnings exceed the excess APY threshold for more than 3 consecutive months. At this time, 10% of the saved excess is distributed for that quarter in the form of additional yield added to each product's rewards pool. So what does this mean? This means that if the earnings from the different protocols and the amount contributed to the APY Cloud results in a higher than normal APY or a higher than the maximum threshold APY, a portion of those excess earnings gets sent back into the protocols in order to earn and bump up the earnings that those protocols receive. Each month during the 3-month excess distribution cycle, 10% of the accrued savings is distributed. This distribution allocation ratio is established through governance proposals. These proposals decide how much goes to each of the yield contracts of the 4 products in the ecosystem that distribute yield for staking or providing liquidity: Flare X, Flare Farm, Flare Loans, and Flare Mutual. The end result is a sustainable yield protocol in optimum market conditions that can survive the most crucial downturns of the market. So essentially, when there is an excess in protocol earnings, instead of bumping that governance APY to an unsustainable level, the excess distributions ensures that they get redistributed to some of the protocols and the APY Cloud in order to enable the longevity of the protocol. This means that over the long term, we're able to sustain that minimum and maximum 5 and 35% APY for the governance staking pool. Stress distributions are enacted when the platform begins to underperform and becomes unable to supply the minimum governance APY established by its participants through protocol earnings alone. Stress distributions are a means of limiting output during a down cycle while still generating rewards for its participants at a bare minimum. Stress distributions enact a way to provide considerably reasonable APY during the worst conditions, while also incentivizing recovery through the use of bonded distributions. So when the protocol earnings aren't enough to cover the governance staking APY, stress distributions are enacted in order to ensure that there is some form of APY continually being earned based on a time release schedule of the 40 million YFLR pool of the governance APY cloud. Lastly, we have bonded distributions. Bond distributions is a period of open price support during stress distributions where holders of YFLR can purchase bonds at a 1-to-1 ratio for their YFLR, locking in both a continued allocation of YFLR governance yield and a guaranteed minimum interest in the event of protocol earnings picking back up and issuing an excess distribution. Bond distributions take place between the time stress distributions begin and end. That period of time in between is called the bonding period. During this time, holders of YFLR are participating in the governance staking can choose to opt into the bonding period with their staked tokens. Bonds are a representation of YFLR governance staking rewards, token appreciation, and bonding rewards. To claim bonds and exchange it back into YFLR, a holder of a bond simply opts out of the bonding period and begins its unlocking period at any point in time, which lasts 7 days. While bonding only takes place during stress distributions, claiming these bonds can take place at any time, allowing the holder of the bond to determine their desired maturity rate and overall profitable outcome. There are 3 outcomes with the bonding period. After purchasing the bond, the market rises. Users gain value based on token appreciation, but exit before excess distributions, resulting in only gaining token appreciation and the regular governance staking rewards. 2. After purchasing the bond, the market rises. Users gain value based on token appreciation, and you allow excess distributions to run until it fulfills its cycles, resulting in gaining token appreciation, governance staking rewards, and your share of the excess distributions allocated to participants in the bonding period. 3. After purchasing the bond, the market falls. Value may be lost to token depreciation, but users are able to claim at any time to exit the market. This means that bonds are a high-risk to high-reward product, providing the ecosystem with a last resort fail-safe by incentivizing removal of supply from circulation in hopes of creating a supply squeeze while demand is still present, or a price floor. In the event the bonding period is successful and the platform achieves excess distributions, bond holders will automatically begin to accrue additional rewards in governance staking without any need for further action. So breaking this all down before we get to the Flare Finance ecosystem map, essentially these protocols ensure, 1, if there's too much yield coming in, it doesn't become unsustainable with the excess distributions. And then with stressed and bonded distributions, it's a way to encourage governance staking and governance participation during periods where the protocols aren't earning as much, or not many people are participating in the Flare X, Flare Farm, Flare Loans, Flare Mutual protocols. If you're getting anything out of this video, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button and left me a comment in the comment section below. So this is the Flare Finance ecosystem overview. Scrolling down, you can see that it has everything relating to the ecosystem of Flare Finance. At this point in the ecosystem map, we can see that these are the 6 protocols: Flare X, Flare Farm, Flare Loans, Flare Mutual, Flare Wrap, and Flare Mine. This is a great thing to look at in order to kind of visualize how these different protocols and systems interact. For this instance, though, we are concerned with the APY Cloud and the governance staking. So scrolling down a little bit, I've highlighted the following. For Flare X, we can see that the liquidity provider fee is split as follows. 90% goes to the liquidity providers if you are providing liquidity on Flare X. 8% of the fee goes to the team distribution contract, and then 2% of this fee goes to the APY Cloud for staking. Flare Loans and Flare Mutual also have 2% of the fee going to the APY Cloud for staking. This is where that 5 to 35% APY for the governance staking starts to come from. The fees of people participating in these different protocols is partially what's contributing to that rewards pool. As we can see with Flare Wrap and Flare Mine, 50% of the fee goes to the APY Cloud for staking for both those protocols. So anytime you wrap, say, XDC to YXDC, 50% of the fee that's charged goes to the APY Cloud for staking. Scrolling down a little bit farther, we can kind of see how this APY Cloud, or the governance staking, begins to take form. So we've got all the fees that come from those different protocols entering into the APY Cloud. In an ideal scenario, the current voted maximum and minimum governance APY is achieved by those protocol earnings. In order to determine what the APY is, we go to step 1, which is what the current minimum and maximum voted governance APY is. Then we go down to see if there's enough protocol earnings from the Flare X, Flare Wrap, all of those protocols, to cover the minimum governance APY multiplied by the total value locked in the governance staking pool. If there is enough to cover, then we've got protocol earnings, as in those earnings are distributed to the governance staking participants. If not, we start dipping into this 40 million YFLR or EXFI reserve for the APY Cloud. In the event that the protocol earnings after step 2 are more than 20% above the maximum governance APY, we begin to talk about those excess distributions. If we have 3 months of excess protocol earnings, we move to the excess distributions. Going along the flowchart, is the APY in excess for 3 months? If it's not, we finish 30% cycle and then store the remaining 70% in the cloud. If the APY Cloud is in excess for more than 3 months, we start to distribute 30% of the savings over 3 months back to the protocols, which means there will be extra earnings in the different protocols, such as Flare X, Flare Loans, Flare Mutuals, etc. Going to stress distributions where the market may be in a downturn. How much of the minimum governance APY is protocol earnings able to cover? What is the time frame established for the stress release schedule via governance? And then what is the value of the deficit in USD, and how much YFLR from that YFLR pool would be distributed to cover that? Going on to step 2, would covering this deficit wholly be unsustainable based on the release schedule established by governance and the amount of YFLR needed? If it's not unsustainable, then we distribute the entire needed amount of YFLR from the APY Cloud without restraint or restriction. This brings it back up to at least that minimum governance APY. If it would be, then we convert the yield period to stress APY and distribute based on the release schedule established by governance, thus allowing us to still earn some form of APY for our governance staking and governance participation. So if we're in that stressed APY, we can go on back down to the bonded distributions. So how much YFLR is needed to cover the yield deficit? Has this amount been covered in the form of bond flare purchases? If it has not, then distribute the YFLR deficit from pool holdings and distribute the remaining bonded currency to compensate. If the amount of YFLR that is needed to cover the yield deficit has been covered in the form of bond flare purchases, then we end the bonding period once the ecosystem exits the stress distribution period. You can optionally withdraw the YFLR from the bonds at any time if the market is healthy and that's what you deem acceptable for your profit margins. If you stay in, we go to distributing the rewards to participants of the bonding period during excess distributions. And that is where a portion of excess distributions will come back to those that participated in the bonding protocol. Again, bonding distributions are, as Flare Finance has put out, a high risk and high reward, meaning that if you're a little more risk averse, it may not be the best thing to get into the bonded distributions. However, participating in the bonded distributions allows us to possibly earn some of the excess distributions paid directly to us for providing that price support or that supply squeeze. So that about wraps it up for this video. Again, I just wanted to provide a brief update on the EXFI snapshot, and it's moving to December 12th. And I also wanted to cover the APY Cloud and the role that excess, stressed, and bond distributions play in supporting the overall ecosystem. As always, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. We'll catch you next time on DeFi Tactics. So it was one heck of a week. My son's first birthday happened. The snapshot for the EXFI token drop got pushed back. So needless to say, I haven't been able to push out many videos. So just before I get out, and they pushed these the end result is a sustainable yield protocol and optimum market. Moving on to stress distributions. Stress distributions are enacted when the platform begins to underperform and become stress distributions enact a way to provide considerably reasonably APY. So when the protocol earnings and the governance APY bond distributions take place between the time stress distributions beginning and end. That period of time is at this